Welcome to the Back to Brick Property Podcast. I'm your host, David Lamb. On this podcast, we'll be stripping property investors and business people alike back to brick to find out how their journey can help you on your journey.
This podcast is brought to you by Orange Sales and Lettings. If you know someone that is looking to sell or let a home, please get in touch. Referral fees are available. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Back to Brick Property Show. I'm your host, David Lamb. Today's show, as always, is sponsored by Orange Sales and Lettings, your North East property experts. Today, we have a force to be reckoned with within the world of flipping properties. Emma has carved out a strong reputation for transforming tired, unloved properties into standout homes. She was also named as 2023's Young Property Investor of the Year. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks,
How are you doing?
David. Good, really good. Yeah, nice to be in sunny Northeast today.
Yes.
Love it.
Everybody says that. I don't know whether they're just saying that to
Northeast.
make me feel better, make us feel better.
I
but,
genuinely love the Northeast. It's very close to my heart, so it's
Yeah.
nice to be back.
I think in general, people do genuinely love coming here because the people are friendly.
People are so welcoming. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like being down south, is it, where nobody says hello to each other?
No.
Everybody's just so warm and welcoming, and obviously I support Newcastle as well,
Yeah.
so best
And we'll
football
end
club
that
in the
podcast
world.
there.
So it's nice to be back.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's uncanny. 95% of the guests that have been on have literally said how nice it is
Yeah.
to be up here. So
I
it
can
must be true. So today's all about you, as I said before. So I guess we're going to go right back to brick. Emma Fielding. Before we get into the property side of the things, tell me a bit about your background, a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm 30 years old now, from Barnsley, and basically I started my corporate career in a FTSE 100 company, Morrison's, the supermarket. I was training to be an accountant, doing my SEMA exams, but actually what I was doing on the side was buying my own, home, basically.
Right.
Bought it off market. Renovated it and sold it. And actually, I was making more money than my corporate job wage.
Right. So did you buy that to flip, or you bought it to live in initially?
So I bought it to live in, yeah. So that was around just before the first COVID lockdown. So that was quite a while ago now. And everybody thought at the time that the market was going to drop and things like that. The market just went crazy because
mental, wasn't it?
everybody wanted to move because they wanted more space, or they wanted to leave their partner and things like that. So I really capitalised on that. So I did a couple of moves myself into my own homes to obviously live. And with that, my equity was growing quite rapidly, very quickly. And again, it was, back in my hometown of Barnsley. And I knew the streets very well, growing up in the area. So the risk was relatively quite low. But that's really where I got really hands-on on the renovations, to keep costs down, but also to learn the trade and to potentially one day go into property full time, because I always thought that I would go into property when I was 40, 45, semi-retired, have a couple of buy-to-lets. I didn't think at 25 I would be, getting into property, and I definitely didn't think at 30 I'd be where I am now. So yeah, that's kind of my background. And then I left in January 21 from Morrison's, and I've never looked back since, to be quite honest. I've just had an amazing journey so far.
Yeah. So you say, it sounded there, from what you said there, that you always envisaged being in property at some point, even before you bought that first property.
Yeah.
So where did that come from?
I think, to be honest, my parents divorced when I was 6. My mum bought a very rundown property, literally around the corner from my dad's house. So I knew the area very well. And we actually renovated that whole house pretty much between my mum.
Physically?
Yeah. From my mum, from me, my, aunties, uncles, we all just chipped in. So I got to see the transformation of a property very, very early on. And actually, I kind of probably took a bit of more interest into it when I was kind of in my teenagers years, watching Homes Under the Hammer, Grand Designs, all those types of property shows. And I remember actually my mum used to get the Barnsley Chronicle every week. And at that time, it used to have a property section in it. And I remember every week on a Friday when she used to get the paper, I used to be looking at the houses, and I'd be used to tracking actually how much they were actually going for.
Right, okay.
And again, you used to see a few that come up 6 months later, a year later, and be like, I've seen that house at a much lower price. And I think that's when, for me, the clogs started turning, be like, like, actually, there's something in this, you know. And also my dad had quite a few friends that was in property or in business really, and they were doing extremely well. And I was looking up to them from a very early age thinking, why are they going on like 8 holidays a year? You know, like from my side, my family, I've only ever known somebody go on holiday once or twice a year. And I really put it all together thinking, it's business, it's property, it's making money, it's not working for somebody else. And that's when I thought at some point I've got to get into business or, you know, property specifically.
Yeah, okay.
So,
but then you bought your first property to live in.
yes, yeah.
And then at what point did it become a flip project?
So I think throughout all that process, really, it was always a property to actually live in. But I always had a game plan that, you know, within 2 years I was going to sell it on and actually, you know, move to another property, then renovate that. You know, it was just the right time, right moment sort of thing with that particular purchase that I thought, yeah, I'm buying it at such a good price, can't buy it any particularly lower. You know, the refurb was about $9,000. Again, I got really hands-on. And then I sold it for about 143 grand with all the furniture. So, and I only bought it at 96.5 grand. So that was a pretty good deal for 9 months. And again, you know, it sold very, very quickly, which was, you know, amazing. And then I did it again. And I think when you're kind of in the mix of it all, I really quickly realised that I was enjoying this. Yeah, it was obviously hard work. You know, I was sacrificing a lot, not seeing friends, family, you know, just focusing solely on property. But I had a game plan and it paid off. And I knew when I got, you know, the sale agreed on my first one, that's when I said to myself, right, I want to do 10 flips. And then I did the 10, then I pushed it to 15. So that's where I am now, to be honest. Yeah.
I'm sure that'll never stop growing.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, buying your own place, renovating it, flipping it, I guess, and living there is obviously very, very tax efficient as well. It's something I did 2 or 3 times before I got into sort of renting properties out. It's really underutilized. I see so many people, especially when they're young, no kids, no ties, and they're buying a new build or just, you know, just buy something you can add value to. Even if it's not to the extent that you and I have, you know, just buy something you can add value to. It's tax efficient when you sell it.
Yeah, definitely.
And until you're tied down, it's something you can keep on doing and doing.
Yeah.
So how did you find that first deal and how did you negotiate to such a good price?
To be honest, how I came across it, my grandma's house was actually up for sale at this particular point because she passed away. And these agents in Barnsley were actually selling my grandma's house. And I remember going to them with my mum one Saturday just to check on the progress and things and saying to them, look, I've got my decision in principle. Do you have anything locally? And again, I kind of knew of them slightly, but I didn't know of them in great detail. But I thought, right, I'll just ask them, you know, what's the harm? So actually they said to me, oh, actually, we've got this property, literally a couple of doors, you know, up the road, where I used to live as well. And do you want to see it? It's off market, but it's going to the market the following week. So I was jumping at the chance. It was 3-bed terrace property, bang in the S75, you know, postcode where I operate, and everything aligned really well. And I think at the time they were wanting about 89 grand, something like that. And I remember me and my mum actually going to view it. And again, it was a lot of work. You know, it was very tired. You know, I think as a spinster had lived in it for the last 40 years or so with cats. So you can imagine like what it was like. But I just saw the potential. The minute I walked in, I saw the potential. And I thought, I cannot go wrong here. And it's that old saying, isn't it? You buy properties on the best street, but in the worst condition. Yeah. And that's what it was. So yeah, we basically just went from there, really. Obviously negotiated a little bit down, but the negotiation is actually what I really enjoy about property. I think that just keeps me alive, to be honest. I love that. Yeah,
it is. It's an exciting part, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you sounded like you were quite knowledgeable about the basics of property, even before that first property. So have you done any training, or was it from books or podcasts?
Yeah, I've never actually done any formal property education at all. I haven't paid, 25 grand for a course. I'm really against that, to be quite honest, because I think there's so many, resources and things out there that you can just tap into. And you have to give your time. And actually probably about 2 or 3 years prior to that, before my first deal, I was actually constantly researching what I needed to do or other people that were doing what I wanted to do. And I think, I've always been a person that's been very driven. So I've always looked at other people for, advice or guidance. And yeah, there's so much free stuff out there, YouTube, Instagram, social media, even connecting with people as well. And just generally asking trades what their best advice is if a situation comes up. So I was kind of doing a lot of background work probably 2 or 3 years before I actually bought my first property.
Yeah, brilliant.
So,
yeah, I'm always a great preacher because I've never done any training either. And I learned most of my stuff from Rob Dix in his books and his podcasts, the two Robs. Stuff like that. There's so much, pay 12 quid for a book.
Yeah.
And like you say, podcast, YouTube, there's so much information out there now. When I first started YouTube, I didn't even, that shows how old I am. YouTube wasn't out there, but there was still plenty of books and free information out there.
Yeah.
Probably took a little bit longer, but in hindsight, I wouldn't change it for the world.
I wouldn't change my path either, to be quite honest. And I think, that 25k that you're going to put towards a course can be put towards your first deposit for your house. Yeah. So, I thought actually that's a much better route. Yeah. To be fair.
So you say you're hands-on, and it sounds like you were very hands-on. To what extreme, to what lengths were you hands-on?
Back in the day, I was knocking down walls.
Right, okay.
To be quite honest. I was going in, with like my... like sweats on or, gym clothes. And I was just doing everything, everything I possibly could, obviously apart from electrics and gas, of course. But everything possible I was doing. And luckily, actually, my stepdad is super, super handy. So on the first few, he really helped me and guided me. But I very much had the vision of actually what, type of bathroom I wanted, what type of tiles, kitchen. And I think that is a skill within itself, having that vision really early on in any project to actually drive that forward and actually to constantly look at the budget as well, because it's so easily, you can buy, I don't know, £50 a square metre tiles, but actually you should be buying 15 or £20 square metre tiles. You need to be looking after that budget all the time. So I guess I've got a mixture of obviously having the vision, but also the financial background as well to keep everything, on budget, which, it is definitely a skill.
Yeah, I think it is a skill, and it's rare because generally I know a lot of creative people in my life, but they're atrocious with money because they're just so focused on creating this beautiful space, which is amazing if it's your own property or you're going to live in. But yeah, if you can also have the ability to balance the books while you're doing that, it's a match made in heaven, isn't it? So
yeah, I think so. I hope so.
So would you describe yourself as a creative person then? Have you got a sort of eye for flair?
Yeah, actually being dyslexic as well, I think I've always had a bit of a creative flair in me, not being very good at spelling or reading, my kind of creativeness really shone through as a kid, very good at art and just having that vision and things, which I guess has transpired into what I do now. And even when I'm walking into properties that have been empty for, 20 odd years, I can quickly very see what we need to knock down, what walls we need to put up, how the plan needs to flow, and things. So, yeah, I think that's you can't teach people that, I think. I think it's very hard to teach people that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think you either have it or you don't, but I guess I'm blessed being dyslexic. I've kind of got that creativeness or that vision.
For sure, yeah. So have you stuck to flips? Is flips all you've done throughout your property journey?
So my goal was actually just to do 10 flips, just to build my cash pot. So I started in property with just literally £20,000, and that was basically £9,000 for the refurb of the first project, £9,000 in the actual deposit itself, and then a couple of grand for legals. Obviously, there was no stamp duty. I was a first-time buyer then. So me starting with £20,000, I knew that actually I couldn't scale up, my buy-to-let portfolio. I need to grow that cash pot first. And obviously, again, I thought time is on my side because, originally I wanted to get into property when I was 40, but actually circumstances changed. I was getting into it when I was 25. So actually with that, I thought, okay, well, if I grow my cash pot to, a few 100K, for example, I'm going to have a much better flexibility in actually buying, rentals and portfolios and being able to leave less money in these particular deals or more money, actually, depending on the particular deal, if needs be. So I thought, thought, well, actually, if I grow my cash pot to that figure, then that can only be a good thing. And I'm very much of the mindset, well, cash is king. And I think if you don't have the cash, then that's when problems can occur.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, okay, I need to do that first. That'll take me, a good couple of years. At one point I was doing, probably about 4 or 5 projects on the go. So I scaled the business up. And within 2 years, I scaled it up to over a million turnover. And obviously then that's when I bought the street purchase, and then that's when I pushed it up to 15. So actually just recently bought flip number 15.
Right.
But then within that, actually now, think I'm going to be completing on one on Friday, if not the next week. One of them is a trade deal. So I've done a trade before. So basically where I haven't renovated it, I've just bought it either off market or at auction, bought it at a really good price, and I put it back on the market. So I've done one of those before. And then the next deal is actually one of those again. And then I'm now starting to look at portfolios of rentals. So a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at a portfolio deal of 25 flats. And those are a different kettle of fish entirely. But it's where I see, obviously, the next part of my journey going, to be honest.
Yeah, so you do see yourself holding long-term assets ultimately then? Yeah, I thought that would be your answer.
Yeah,
brilliant way to
definitely.
do it as well, by the way. And you've obviously done it very successfully.
Thank you.
Flips are brilliant. I love flips.
I love flips. I just love the feeling of, buying something extremely run down that nobody wants. Obviously I buy from different avenues as well, and turn it into something that somebody loves. And when people walk in my properties and they go, wow, that to me is the cherry on top. It's not necessarily the money anymore. I think probably in the early days I was driven by that, but now I'm not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's actually, creating that wow factor. It's creating that amazing space, and just that passion of turning something into that nobody wants into something amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I just love the fact that with flips, if you obviously you do your numbers, you do your due diligence before you start, so your budget's set.
Yeah.
It's obviously a bigger budget than it would be for a buy-to-let refurb.
Yeah.
And you can, do the nice things, your nice finishes, your upgraded kitchens, your nicer tiles, stuff like that. It's a nice way to earn your money.
Yeah.
Whereas buy-to-lets, your refurbs, you generally have a 20 grand budget, back to brick, 25, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's quite bland with the budget that you're working with.
Yeah.
So being able to do flips, I've done quite a few myself, and I've loved it. I've absolutely loved them.
Yeah, I just love the whole process, And again, obviously, buy-to-lets, they have their headaches, tenants and their issues and things. But I think for me, flips has just been a great way to get into property, and actually then being able to scale the business as well, and to work with investors. It's been an amazing journey so far. So I feel like I'm only just getting started, really.
I'm sure you are. Yeah, it's a great way to do it. It's not the route a lot of people do. I think a lot of people get into buy-to-lets early.
Yeah.
And sort of, it's slower. It's probably a little bit more frustrating. But if you can create that big cash pot and then go, and then your buy-to-let career is going to be so much easier from there. So your second deal then, was that a similar sort of deal?
Yeah, really similar sort of deal, just on a better street in a better area of Barnsley. Similar numbers, to be honest. And then that was when I had a plan within my head, thinking, right, okay, I'm doing this. I'm enjoying it. I'm not enjoying my corporate job, especially not the 3 hours a day traveling. And I thought this is the time really to go at it. And again, I think it definitely was easier back then. I wasn't with anybody. I don't have children or anything, so I could really put my eggs in all the baskets really, and just go for it. And I think you've got to be quite selfish as well, and you've got to just if you have that goal and that vision, you've just got to go for it. And I did that. So I self-managed about 8 of my own projects. Right. And again, things were going on at multiple times and things. And then after 8 projects, I then started working with my main contractor that I work with now. Right. And again, I've seen huge benefits of that. Even though I know what's going on day in, day out, it's been a great, acceleration to the business as well.
How have you found that transition from stepping away? Because I really miss those days of sleeping at my renovation, covered in dust, ripping skirting boards off, decorating myself, doing the waste removal myself in my old car, down at the you do it because you have to do it at the time.
Yeah.
Because you can't afford to pay the trades. But I really miss those. I look back on them, they were some of my happiest times.
Yeah. To be honest, looking back at it, I used to rope in my stepdad, my best friend, a couple of friends, and like, just being involved in it, in like the nitty gritty of it all. And like, I always used to think, okay, like I'm beating the corporate system here. And that's what I loved, just getting up really early, getting hands on, going to the tips, all that sort of stuff. I just absolutely loved it. And don't get me wrong, I love it now, but it's a different side to it all. I've got 7 lads on site right now that I'm obviously, accountable for. I need to know what's going on. And I do know what's going on, even though I'm not there every day. But it's a different skill managing people, and managing expectations, and managing, egos, and managing just trays in general. There's a lot that goes on, to be honest.
For sure. Yeah. So I guess, did you say you had 8 before you handed over to a main contract?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those first sort of 8, were there any major mishaps? Was there anything you look back on and think, bloody hell, I learned a very valuable lesson there?
Yeah, I think actually probably one of them was a quite a big extension project, actually, 55 square metres wraparound extension to a detached bungalow on Millionaires Row in Barnsley. And I just remember seeing this house, this bungalow on the market at the time, thinking that would be amazing, and I was pushing it to the max, with investors, with my own finances, because my finances go into the refurb and stuff. But I thought, this is a great opportunity. I just cannot, lose out on it. Managed to negotiate a really good deal, got the investors' money for the purchase and things. But obviously, doing a massive renovation like that, bearing in mind we were building in winter, it was an 8-month renovation. I was really at the point where this is make or break, financially. I had, I think, 3 or 4 other projects on the go. I might have had one in legals to be sold. And when things are delayed in legals without your control, it is so frustrating, and it has that really bad effect on obviously the business, or can do anyway. But yeah, there was definitely some really nervous times, going into that renovation. But saying that, I knew I was going to sell it at a really good price. I was going to obviously make, decent money on it. And we already had buyers interested. So I knew I just had to get to that point to get this particular project finished before, obviously, I could have the fruits of my labour. But yeah, I think the financial management of a business, also multiple projects at once, within that project was really, really tough, because I was overstretching myself. You could class it as overtrading, but I knew I was doing that because the market was extremely good. I think it was just after the 3rd lockdown or something. Again, people were moving, they wanted to move, and this particular bungalow, I sold it, I don't know, probably about 50k over the ceiling price of that particular street and area. But I just had to go for it. But there was definitely a few sleepless nights within that. And I remember saying to the investors, look, I'm really pushing hard here. But they had they backed me. And I think when you've got relationships like that with investors, if things do hit the fan, you've got them as backup. Which,
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's, you've proven yourself to them obviously as well, and it's probably going to do you good in the long term with that relationship. They've seen you're under pressure. They've seen you're under the pump. They've seen that things haven't gone exactly as planned, which they never do. But you still dealt with it.
Building in winter is never a good thing. But I did have a great team of builders around me, and again, I got really hands on within that renovation. I think the main builder was really shocked. I wasn't laying bricks, but I was pretty much the labourer for the whole entire refurb, to be quite honest.
Excellent. Yeah, it's the thing we're doing flips. I guess there's uncertainty at either end, because when you're doing buy-to-let, you do your renovation, and then within sort of 6 to 8 weeks your refinance is going to be through, because barring a few mishaps with surveys, valuations, etc. But with flips, and I experienced this, I learned the hard way myself. I did a couple of flips in my early days. I did overtrade, so I'd sold one flip and I'd committed to my next one. And then the sale fell through. Right
and
at the end.
And then you're thinking, shit.
Luckily, I still managed to salvage the next purchase. But yeah, I learned the hard way. You know, it's not guaranteed once you refinance the end of buy-to-let.
Yeah, and I think the whole legal system within the UK is really, really tricky for developers because nothing is guaranteed until you exchange. And actually this year I've had 2 sales that have fallen through very, very last minute. Nothing to do with the actual properties, but just their own circumstances have changed. And you're thinking, okay, well, that money's going to go there, that money's going to go there. I'm going to buy this, blah 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 blah. But actually, when that happens, you've got to then go right back to actually then getting the property sold again, and things, and that can take time, and things. So yeah, it's not easy getting a house, to the point where it's sold. But I guess it's just part of flipping houses, to be quite honest.
You've got to manage that cash flow as well. Make sure you got that pot of cash always available, haven't you?
Definitely.
So as we know, flipping's all about. It's about when you buy. If you buy well, then you 9 times out of 10 you're going to do well, aren't you? So what's your process now, and what was it back then for sourcing deals, and what was your criteria? Were you looking at 25% profit margins? What were you looking for, and has it changed as you've gone along?
Yeah, so to be honest, I judge it on profit is one, but also time that it's going to take, for the lads to actually do the refurbs. I think this year particularly, I've done quite heavy refurbs, 200 grand in a street renovation, another 130 grand in a farmhouse, another 130 grand in this current renovation. So there's a lot of money that goes into, the renovations, but I'm quite specific in actually what I look for now. And even in the early days I was, but my criteria that back then was different. My criteria was like, I want to be in and out very, very quickly. I want to do a very cosmetic refurb, nothing structural apart from knocking down an internal wall. But now the refurbs are much heavier. But I guess that comes with obviously scaling the business, having more funds available with investors and also my own funds as well. And obviously with that, yes, the margins are bigger. And things. So yes, I guess it's changed slightly, and I think you always have got to adapt and be flexible. But I would take a really quick, easy deal or a trade deal in this market.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I've seen many people doing trade. I've never done any trade in my life. It just seems too good to be true. But then I know a guy who's doing it, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's killing it, to be honest. He's not making huge funds, but it's just easy funds.
It's just the volume, isn't it?
Yeah,
that
he's making 10 or 15 grand a deal.
Exactly.
But he's doing loads of them.
Yeah.
Fair play to him.
Yeah, and I think that's a whole strategy within itself. I don't think it's something that I would, go down heavily on. But 1 or 2 deals here and there, doing that, I think that's a good thing for your cash flow.
Complements the rest of your work.
Of course, yeah.
So you're working mainly direct to vendor when you're purchasing, or are you going through agents,
to be honest,
auctions?
If I look at the whole spectrum of the properties that I've actually purchased, probably a majority of them have actually been through Rightmove. And it's those types of properties that I've watched for quite a few weeks or months. They've come down in price because they've been overvalued from day dot. And I know that, obviously being from the area and things. And actually, when they've been reduced by 20-30 grand, that's when I go in with my offer. And again, I'm a type of person that if I say I'm going to buy something, I buy it regardless of the survey, regardless of the vendor's situation. If we've got to wait 8 months to actually get the keys, which I've done in one situation, I will commit to buy it and stuff. So my offer might not be the asking price that they want, but it's a fair offer for obviously the work that is needed. But also, I will guarantee that I will buy it. I've never backed out of a sale. Yeah. So
it sounds like you're quite a patient person. Then, if you're willing to sort of favourite stuff on Rightmove, wait for the reductions to come through. Yeah. And then how easy, how disciplined do you have to be to stick to your price? Because
very disciplined.
I was going to say, because it must get to a point where you're like, it's nearly there. Do you know what? I'll just have it for 10 grand.
Yeah, anyway. I think to be honest, I think at that point you've got to look at really different factors. Again, how long is it going to take you? What is the profit at the end of it, etc. And I tend to go in with one price only for what I'm willing to pay, but I'll back that up with the work that I need to do, sold comparables. I'll even get my surveyor around as well. So we've got all the evidence to say, okay, well, actually, we should be paying X for this, not Y, regardless of what the agent has put it up for. So yeah, that's been obviously a majority of the purchases, but a few of them have come direct to vendor, pre-auction, post-auction as well. So there is a full mix, to be quite honest.
Yeah. How do you evaluate whether the property's worth your time flipping then? Is there a minimum profit you want to make, or is it on margins? How do you evaluate that?
So I think obviously for a 3-bed semi, profit is very different to a detached bungalow, for example. So because I've done quite a few in a particular area, if they're not around a certain figure, for example, I won't touch it. But actually, if I can get in and out of a deal quickly, then I'll go for it. I'll take the hit. So it's very dependent. It's very specific to the actual property itself. And also as well, what I want to do in terms of, okay, well, if I want to do, 2 big projects a year, then I'll sacrifice doing the smaller stuff. I won't do the small stuff. I'll go for the bigger stuff, which is probably what I've been doing over the last 12 months, to be honest.
And then with the smaller stuff, do you take the opportunity to then source those properties on if you...
I've never actually sourced any properties on at all. I've always just kept them for myself.
I think you need to start. I'll buy them.
I might have to start, yeah. But again, I've never done any sourcing or anything like that. Not that I'm not interested in it. I just
got enough on your plate.
Yeah, I've got enough on. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So, have you remained with the same trades team? So you did 8 and then you passed it over to a main contractor. Have you stuck with that main contractor ever since?
Yeah. So my main contractor still works with me now. And actually some of the lads that were around me, property number 1, 2 and 3 and 4, they actually work with me now.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's actually a hybrid effect. That's the best way I can probably describe it, is that yes, my main contractor is on site every day, but actually the guys that I was working with before, the team that I built myself, they actually now work with the main contractor as well. Right. So again, I know what's going on. And again, it's really nice actually to have those relationships with people that I've had really in the early days, and actually I think they're excited to know what's coming next, because they know full well that I'm somebody that sticks my word, but actually if you do a good job, which they have done, you'll come to project to project to project, and all they want is to get paid on a Friday, on time, and there's never been any issues regarding payment or anything. I'm a firm believer if the guys have done a good job, they get paid. And if they don't do a good job, then we need to obviously rectify it and solve it. But luckily, I've got a really good team that, very small issues ever come up, to be honest.
How do you handle, because you say they very rarely come up, but they do come up, don't they?
Of course.
How do you find it? Do you find it easy to handle those situations because of the relationship you've already got with them?
Yeah, I think, I like to give my trades, an element of flexibility and actually ownership on the renovation as well. My main contractor and the team around me, they're more than open to make suggestions on what we should be doing or how this floor plan might work. And even very, very recently in the last, couple of days, we've had to rejig, the floor plan for a master bedroom, a second bedroom, an ensuite and a main bathroom. And actually it was my main contractor that have actually come up with that. So I like to give them a sense of that's your bag. If you want to dictate that, if you want to control that and do that, you do it. And actually then now he'll obviously see it come to life.
And he feels valued because
he feels valued. And to be fair, not every suggestion will work for whatever reason, or because I want a particular design and things like that. But, I think a good chunk of what they suggest, I think we put into place, and I think that gives people ownership and also a sense of responsibility that they want to carry it through. Yeah,
for sure. No, I like that, and just the fact, like you said, you don't have to go with their suggestions, but just the fact you're open to them,
of course,
to consider them, it makes them feel feel good about themselves, doesn't it? So, with your finishes and your styles, obviously, I guess you follow certain trends, but is it rinse and repeat? Do you find yourself using the same kitchens, the same tiles?
Absolutely not. No. And I think probably if you look down kind of my social media pages, no renovation is ever the same at all. It's really not. And I think, I like to give each renovation character. And with that, it's different colours, it's different materials. It's a whole different aspect to every renovation. And I think even the early ones that I look at, I would probably still put them in today, like, those kitchens, those bathrooms, etc.
Okay.
And then, even the bigger stuff, the bigger projects that I do, there's no, part of that I would take to the next one. I think it's really good to have a unique style on every different project. And again, they've got a different history. Each particular house has got a different history. But I'm a firm believer in keeping to the original features and enhancing them, because I think that, to be honest, is what makes people go wow, but also give that contemporary modern twist onto the properties.
Have a lot of the properties that you've done being sort of character homes?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So one of them is actually a farmhouse that dates back to 1850s, which is absolutely incredible, amazing house. And basically we were taking down all the ceilings and we saw these beautiful beams and we thought, right, we've got to just enhance them, leave the beams as vaulted ceilings, put LED lights in them, enhance them and all that jazz. And that to me is like, wow, that project particularly was actually more a restoration project in terms of actually restoring what is already there and bringing it up to today's standard. And again, another property that I bought last year, again, being empty since 1972, all the original features, I mean, loads of them. And again, that was more a restoration project. But I think people like, the original features. And again, you don't get them in new builds at all, do you?
No, and you see people do renovation projects and removing these gorgeous ceiling roses and beautiful coving. I'm just like, what are you doing?
I love really deep, big coving, all the original architraves, skirting boards that are knee high, all that I love.
Yeah, you can't buy them anymore. So there's huge value in them because people view the house at the end of the project. They know they can't get hold of these products
and
anymore.
All the original fireplaces as well. I'm a massive stickler for keeping the original fireplaces.
Good. It's good to hear. So on a day-to-day, what does your role look like? Obviously, you're heavily involved in the design, but what does your standard day look like, if there is one?
Pretty much, get up, emails straight away. I've always got a massive to-do list of people I need to contact or chase, or solicitors, admin, estate agents. I get on site as well, probably on site about 3 times a week. And that can range from a morning or half an hour, depending on, what my day looks like. Obviously, I'm always checking the market and things, pushing that side of things forward, and, trying to have some sort of work-life balance, because I think, being an entrepreneur, it's really hard to have that work-life balance. I need to try and
is that a thing?
Is
work-life balance even possible?
Oh, I don't know. I think I go swings and roundabouts with it, to be honest. I think when I'm heavily involved in renovations, I don't have much work-life balance at all, but I wouldn't change it for the absolute world. No. But when we haven't got, renovations on, because obviously they're in legals to be sold or I'm buying more, I think that's when I have a bit more of a work-life balance. But work never stops, to be honest.
And everyone I know that's been successful has zero work-life balance. That's the sacrifice you make, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. You're either prepared to make that sacrifice or you're not, for me. But yeah. So are there any sort of cost-effective upgrades that people doing flips maybe don't think about that you can suggest? Where can you really add value without spending a fortune? Obviously, people say kitchens and bathrooms where you add your value, of course. Yeah. Is there anything that stands out in your mind that you use time and time again that's quite cost effective?
Yeah, I think, if you're looking at kind of 3-bed semi properties, one of the best things you can do is knock down the internal wall between the kitchen and the dining room, open that space up. Yep. We have more families now that are wanting open plan living, so that is perfect. And straight away when I see, a semi that hasn't got that open plan kitchen dining space, that's the first thing I do. Yep. And actually to do, it's really quite easy. Structural engineer, get the calculations, obviously do the application to building control, get them round to visit, obviously when the pad stones are in, steel's in, and then obviously for final sign off and things. That's really easy. So I think you're creating a lot of value there. Also as well, I really like getting in downstairs loos as well, and utility rooms. Again, going back to 3-bed semis, if you can create a downstairs loo or a utility room or both, what a win, to be honest. Again, you're enhancing that value straight away. I'm not a massive fan of loft conversions, to be honest. I think every time I've come across going back to a 3-bed semi, it hasn't brought me any more returns actually at all.
It's a space you're losing with your staircase,
It
isn't
is,
it?
yeah, because you're always losing that smaller third bedroom,
Yeah.
or you're making the hallway so tight that it doesn't feel
Yeah.
right. And again, you know, I've never really seen the uplift, unless obviously you're living in the property for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Then I think that's when you'll see the uplift. But from my side, I've never actually done a loft conversion because the numbers haven't worked at all.
No.
But actually, then saying that, with bigger projects that I've done, I've only done one extension project. Would I do it again? Yeah, I probably would, but I think I'd go bigger, to be honest. So in the extension world, I think, you know, bigger is better.
If you're going to do it.
If you're going to do it, do the full hog.
Yeah.
Which actually with this particular renovation we did. But then in other renovations, if you've got a really good amount of floor space, you know, this particular bungalow that I'm renovating at the minute, that's 2,000 square feet.
Saw that.
We can rejig the floor plan to work better. So
Yeah.
we're going to convert the garage, you know, we're going to add 2 en suites, open plan kitchen dining space, utility space, you know, again, let that floor plan flow. And I think I'm a massive believer in that the floor plan has got to flow, it's got to work. So if it doesn't work, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think, you know, if you're converting with what's already there, unless you want to go big, like in terms of extensions, work with what you've got, but add more that way.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. What's a common mistake that you see people making when doing flip projects?
Not buying at the best price possible, because there is that old saying that you make your money when you buy, and I think that is really, really true. Doesn't matter if the market is in good or a bad position, you do make your money when you buy, not when you sell. You know, so I see people just overbuying for stock that they shouldn't really be buying at that particular price. And I actually did it one time where I didn't actually make as much money as what I thought, and it was an off-market purchase. You know, again, a three bed semi, but the chain was a chain of 5, and it was just taking so long to get in legals. Obviously, we had to knock the price down just because it was taking so long, and things like that. It was awful. But yeah, not really negotiating on the best possible price. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people get excited, don't they? And there's a mindset, especially with inexperienced investors, that if they see a property that needs a renovation,
Yeah.
they think that makes it a deal.
Yeah, and
You know,
it doesn't make it a deal, because, you know, you've got to have a big contingency budget anyway. Doesn't matter what renovation you're doing. If it's a 2-bed terrace to a, you know, massive detached property, you've got to have that contingency in. And what I say to people that come on my site days and things is that you've got to work your numbers off worst case scenario in terms of what that property is going to sell. Yeah. Not likelihood, not best case, because we're not really in that market currently right now. Yeah. You've got to work your numbers off worst case in terms of what that particular property is going to sell for.
100%.
And if it doesn't work, then don't do it at all.
Yeah,
because you're
for
just
sure.
going to get into headaches.
Yeah, you just got to cover yourself. I always say to people, same as you know, work on the lowest possible sale price.
Yeah.
And your highest possible development cost.
Yeah.
And then if it still works, know that you can go into it with confidence.
Definitely.
So how do you usually? You've mentioned private finance a couple of times. How do you? When you first started out, you're obviously using your own money. At what point did you start taking angel investors on?
So it was basically house number 4, actually. So I'd obviously sold my first 2 that were my own projects. House number 3, I put my own capital into. And it was actually when I was selling house 3, I thought, actually, I've got all this money now sitting there basically waiting for this house to be sold. Obviously, you know, it takes time in legals. And I thought, right, I've got to go out and find some more money from somewhere. Bearing in mind, I've got no experience of investors at all really at this point. And I remember actually sending an email to a really old contact of mine back in my uni days. And he was non-exec director of Northumbria University, and we got chatting at a graduation dinner before I was going over to Babson to study. And I remember sending him this email saying, I know you've got property experience about 40 odd years. Can I just, have a call with you or, touch base with you about a couple of, projects that I'm wanting to do. And at this time, I actually wasn't pitching it as an investment at all. I was just saying, I really just want some, advice really, because he's got so many years of experience. Bearing in mind, he was chief operating officer of quite a big global company. So it wasn't just property advice, it was more the business advice as well that I was really seeking. And actually him and his wife actually came down to Barnsley and they saw what I was doing. I took them around, property number 3, and they thought, actually, we quite like what you're doing. Would you like some investment? And again, actually, how things aligned was that property number 4 was in the same area of where I actually grew up in. So it was around the corner from my parents' house. And I thought, right, in terms of risk, this property number 4 is perfect to work with investors. Now, what I do say when you're working investors, the risk has got to be low. You've got to be really concrete on your numbers. And luckily for me, that particular area, that particular house, a 3-bed semi, bearing in mind, house number 2 was about less than a quarter of a mile away. So I was creating my own sole comparables there. Brilliant. I thought, right, this is the one that I pitched to them basically. So I remember, just sending them a few photos, Rightmove link, etc. And they came back with quite a big email, and they said, yeah, and we'll invest, and that was 150k. And they actually invest £500,000 a year with me, and they have done since about 3 or 4 years. So yeah,
super,
which is really good. And then saying that, the other investors have either been connections through either social media or they've been through my business mentor as well. So I work with the business mentor that, kind of steers me in the right direction. Again, if I've got any issues, problems, queries, it's a call away. And with that, obviously, he's then introduced me to certain people. And again, these people are more retired CEOs or acting CEOs right now. And these people are obviously time poor, but they're cash rich. And they want to put their money into something that is earning more than the banks. And obviously with that, they then invest in me and my business, and they get to come along the journey of flipping houses. And that's been really good. So I think to date I've raised about 2.7 million to date. So yeah, and how I normally structure it with investors is that they put in for the purchase price and then the rest I fund, obviously through my own funds.
And you've stuck to that structure?
Yeah, and they have a legal charge on the property and also a loan agreement as well, and it's all through the solicitors. So which again, means that it's all legit and things like that. So yeah.
That's such a sensible, clean way of doing things.
Yes.
You just give me the funds for the purchase.
Yeah.
Let me do the rest. You've got a charge anyway, so ultimately you've paid for the property and you have first charge on the property. Yeah. It's just a simple, it makes so much sense.
And it's saying that for the smaller investors around 50k, I'll give them PG or a loan agreement or, whatever they're happy with. Yeah. But for the bigger investors, I think giving them that security of the property, and they do know that if anything did happen or, if shit really did hit the fan with the market, they have got that security. And actually the money that is at risk is my funds.
Exactly.
But actually, when I look at it from a logical point of view, if that property isn't going to make money, then we shouldn't be doing that project anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they're repeat investors with you, that you've already built that relationship, you've got that credibility with them anyway. Yeah. So that's a brilliant way of doing things. So the private investors that you've found through social media, talk us through that process.
I was actually quite reluctant about starting my kind of social media, posting, whatever you want to call
Cap
it.
in hand.
Yeah, because I think sometimes you can overshare too much, and I think sometimes I have been guilty of that, because there's always prying eyes on social media, which I just don't get. But anyway, but yeah, I think for me, social media has been a great tool, to grow my network, but also with, potential investors as well. And, just to get your name out there. I think, if you tell everybody what you do, and I think, Instagram and social social media is very much like your shop window anyway. And if people see actually you're actively doing what you say you're doing, or you're winning awards and, you're putting that on socials, it gives you a lot of credibility. And I think I probably do stick out a bit like a sore thumb, because I'm a woman, I'm young, I'm Yorkshire. So I get noticed quite a bit through that, and obviously through the high quality renovations as well. So I think people are just generally intrigued where they've DM'd me, and they've obviously asked, oh, how do you fund things? And I'm like, oh, well, through private investors, blah, blah. Yep. This is the structure. And actually, I've turned down a lot of investment from social media just because morals don't align or values don't align. Yep. But there has been one or two that I have taken from social media.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah. I think you stand out on social media because A, your finished product is very good.
Thank you.
And B, you've stuck to flips, which is quite rare.
Yeah.
Most people will make a bit of money, get excited and start thinking, right, I'm going to buy a load of property.
Yeah.
And start buying loads of buy-to-lets and slow themselves down. So the fact you've just been laser focused and just done repeat, obviously different types of properties. Yeah. I think it's quite rare actually that you've done that.
I think when people understand the thinking and the planning behind it, then they get it and stuff. And I've actually never had anybody say, oh, that's a bad idea.
No.
Just yet. So touch wood.
Yeah. No, it's really good to see that you've made a proper business out of flipping houses, whereas generally people use flips to complement another strategy to keep that cash pot going,
alive,
which makes perfect
debt,
sense.
Exactly, and all that jazz.
Pay off other investors, whereas you've made it a proper business, and I'm sure you'll continue to do so. So when you've got multiple projects going on at one time, how difficult do you find it to manage your cash flow? It
is a skill within itself. I don't think any property course or uni course would ever teach you how to actually manage cash flow at that particular point. I think you've just got to overestimate everything in your early stages of a budgeting and planning for a renovation, and I think it just comes down to management, and always every decision that you make, you've got to think at the numbers. How does that affect the profitability? How does that affect the numbers? What if we go over by 10-20%? Or what if we're under? How does that look? And I think when you are running multiple projects, you have to keep your finger on the pulse all the time. And actually a really good tool that how I keep up to date with my numbers is that, yes, I've got big spreadsheets of every single project tying into a master spreadsheet and all that jazz. But actually, I have a screenshot of all the projects and the financial breakdown on my phone. So even when I'm on site, when I don't have my Mac actually with me, I can see exactly where it is, which again, I think is a really valuable thing. And I think, just keeping it in the back of your head that this project might not sell at what you're predicting. So that's why it's so important to work off worst case scenario in terms of what that particular house is going to sell for, and anything over that is, I think, a bonus.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about this, about the street project then.
Yeah, so the street project was actually a project that is on a private road. It's 3 properties. It was 2 semi-detached properties, 2,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, all the original features. One of them has been empty since 1972, and the other property was a 2-bed detached property with planning for a double-story extension, and then some garages as well. So that particular project was actually at auction. So I saw it a few months prior to actually it going at auction, and I was thinking, well, this is a great project. It's all. I was actually buying them at once as well, but they're all title split as well. So I didn't have to faff around with title split. Brilliant. They would just, the owners were just wanting simplicity to get rid of them all in one shot, because they'd owned them for so long. So I remember obviously viewing them thinking, wow, these are absolutely amazing. They're in West Yorkshire as well, quite a good area that I know well. And I thought, what an opportunity, A, to buy 3 houses at once, A, for it to be on a private road, but actually what you can do with them as well. But it really needed somebody with a lot of cash or, potential cash to actually put into them, because the asking price was, the reserve price was 595. So, quite a hefty price tag before you've even
Extensive
started.
work's needed for all three.
Really extensive work. Yeah, you're talking over 100K for all three. You know, and for me, you know, yes, they went into auction, they didn't sell. And I was planning on them not selling because there was at such a high price initially. So I was working my numbers off a lot lower figure than that. And I remember actually being in London when the auction was actually, you know, live and things, and just looking at it saying, this is not going to sell, this is not going to sell. Didn't sell. So I remember phoning up the auction house saying, look, give me 24 hours to secure the funds, but I'm buying these particular properties. So funnily enough, the next day I was actually with my investor in London. And I said, look, I want to buy this. He already kind of knew about them anyway because we already had a pre-conversation. But I said, look, didn't sell auction yesterday. This is the time that we need to go in. But we need to go in with a fair and reasonable offer. So we did. We went in with a fair and reasonable offer. And I think the vendors had another offer that was a lot lower than mine anyway. But I knew what we could do to them and obviously made them a lot better. And also what I knew that was happening in the background is that the stamp duty relief for multiple dwellings was going up on the 31st of May. So I had a window of around 10 weeks to complete to make sure this deal wasn't going to cost me double in stamp duty. So we got the 3 houses. I think we paid £16,500 in stamp duty. If not, it would have been over 30. So we had that to play with as well. But anyway, we then obviously purchased them, and then from there we renovated them. So my initial strategy with that particular deal was actually to put them all back into the auction as they are right there, but on a 200 grand, so 200 grand per house.
Right, okay.
And it was basically just to offload one of the properties that I didn't want to renovate, which was actually the detached property with planning. I didn't want to build. I've obviously just done a big extension, and that wasn't in my game plan at all. So I thought, right, we'll offload that one. So what we did, we sold that one, and I actually gave the investor some money back within 3 months. So he's thinking, great, you know, I've put all this money in, but actually I'm getting some money back within 3 months. Yeah. So that obviously kept him happy. And I was conscious that yes, it was a big amount that I was obviously learning from him, but I wanted to make him happy. So that was, you know, a really good plan with that. And then the 2 semis, the reason why they didn't actually sell at auction was that they had front gardens and you needed to create the car parking because they didn't have any car parking. But obviously somebody needed to do it at the same time. So obviously getting 2 lots of owners, cost, time to do that was going to be quite hard. But actually if one owner owned both of them, you could do it in one swoop, basically. So that's what we did, and obviously then we fully renovated them, went back to brick, etc. You know, and there again, you know, 600, you know, 6-figure renovations within themselves. You know, the massive properties, but rightly so, they needed that money spending on them, obviously, to bring them up to today's spec. So basically, from obviously that initial investment of 550, that particular deal is now worth over £1 million. Which is pretty cool, to be honest, and obviously less than 12 months as well to turn that around. And obviously now we're selling off the 2 semis, which it's pretty cool considering got an offer on one of them as well. So,
superb, well done. Is that your favourite project at the mall?
I would probably say actually this current project that I'm doing now, Project Jungle.
Is that the bungalow?
That is the bungalow.
Saw that, yeah. Saw it on your socials.
Yes. So
it's a big lump.
It's an amazing bungalow, 2,000 square feet. Bought off the local council as well because they actually did a compulsory purchase order on the particular project because it's been empty for the last 20 odd years. Now I'm from that area. You know, I've walked past this bungalow for, you know, the last 30 years. And I actually said to my friend donkeys years ago that one day I'll buy that bungalow. So that for me is more a passion project than anything. And actually, you know, it's been ransacked so many times. The homeless have been in it, you know, and we bought it in such a state. I mean, it was awful. Probably the worst house I've ever bought, but structurally absolutely sound, which is obviously really, really lucky. So again, you know, we're rejigging the floor plan, converting the garage into the 3rd bedroom, adding, you know, second ensuite, etc. And again, that'll be very, very high spec. So that is actually project number 15 for me. And I feel like, you know, we're really going all out in the fixtures and fittings and the spec of it all. But rightly so, you know, that project will be worth, you know, £500,000 when it's done.
And that's your favourite because of the history behind it.
Yeah, because of the history behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get that. So you've already talked about looking at blocks of flats potentially to rent out, other things. At what are you at the crossroads now where you think, right, I've done 15, now I'm going to start holding assets?
Yes.
Are you there yet?
Yeah. So actually, one that I'm supposed to be completing on Friday or next week, you know, that one is a hold, to be honest. So obviously we'll build up the holding, you know, portfolio really. But actually what I'm probably more interested in is actually buying the portfolio. So not just buying one or two.
Yeah.
Not buying them, you know, from different vendors, buying them from the same vendor.
Yeah.
But buying in large amounts. And I think when I was actually buying the street, when I was buying 3 houses at once, I worked out, well, it's not much difference in legals. You know, it's just the same process. Obviously, you know, times it by 3. And I think, you know, you can get really good scalability if you're buying multiple, you know, houses at one time. 100%. And especially if you're buying them from, you know, that one particular vendor as well. Obviously, there's many tax advantages as well. So I'm looking at buying, you know, any more than 6 houses from a particular vendor. Because I can do the commercial stamp duty rates, which is obviously lower than residential. But also I can get the scalability. And when it comes to the actual work that needs to be done on them as well, bearing in mind these projects will be very tired buy-to-lets. You know, they've been buy-to-lets for the last 20 odd years. They do need refurb, and I've got the team behind me where I can say, okay, there's the keys. I'll see you in 8 weeks or 6 weeks, you know, however long it's going to take for those refurbs. So I can actually get scalability within that business quite quickly, because I've got the private investors behind me. Also the contacts with off-market purchasers as well. And also, it's just going to be the next natural step, to be honest. Yeah.
And do you foresee yourself still complementing that strategy with flips?
I think for probably about 3 to 4 years, I probably won't flip, to be honest, because I'll go hell for leather with the portfolio purchases. Again, you know, one of the beauties of actually flipping a lot, building my own cash pot up first has been a massive advantage there. And actually, again, working with investors where I've actually, you know, gained more investment. I don't necessarily have to worry about, you know, bigger pots of cash coming in because we've already got that. Or, you know, we've got that in certain aspects and things. So I think for me, it's just going to be hell for leather on flips.
I can tell.
Well, on rentals and things. But yeah, I like to set a goal and I like to hit it. So like with the flips, I said 10, then 15. And then if I can obviously get to a really good number
What's your number?
I'm not going to say. But
I thought you were going to say it there.
Yeah, it's
I'm
high.
sure it's higher than 15.
Yeah,
I hope so anyway.
Definitely higher.
But there's definitely opportunity there with all the landlords now because of Section 24 and the tax changes, etc.
Yeah.
You know, they are offloading, looking to offload portfolios in one lump.
Yeah.
Helps if they're in limited companies, doesn't it? But a lot of them aren't. They're in personal names.
Yeah.
But there's still opportunity there.
Of course, yeah. I think there's massive opportunity, you know, for somebody like me that's, you know, relatively quite young. I'm going to be in this industry for the next 20, 30 years. So for me, I find it's a really, really good time to buy. And I think people are motivated to sell as well. And I want to buy now. So, you know, at the end of the day, let's just get the deal done.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
No, I speak to, obviously with having the estate agency, we manage a lot of portfolios for people, and a lot of them are looking to get out, the elderly people.
Yeah.
Elderly sort of 50s and 60s, if you like.
Course,
they're just sick of the landscape changing every year and just want out. They're fed up.
Yeah.
So that obviously creates huge opportunity for people us.
Yeah. And I think, you know, where, you know, the market is taking somewhat downturn, it creates opportunities. And I think within that market, you need to, you know, have the cash available if it's through yourself or investors, you know, and I'm fortunate in that position. So yeah, I think bring on the world of rentals because it's going to be a whole different kettle of fish.
We'll have to do another podcast. You'll be crying.
Yeah, I'll be like, oh my God, you know, I've had these issues.
Yeah, I'm going back to flips.
I think, to be honest, I think that again, that's probably one of the best things about flips. You don't deal with tenants.
Oh, 100%.
You know, when that contract is signed, that's the deal done.
100%.
You know, so
well, I've got some amazing tenants, but I've also got some very needy people as well. But it's just the rough with the smooth. So on the market, how you seeing the market currently? I know you're very much Barnsley based, but in general, with higher interest rates, higher material costs for refurbs.
Yeah.
What's your sort of view on the market currently where we are today?
I think, to be honest, I think the first time buyer market is still doing very, very well. And I think that second time mover market is doing well. But I think, you know, in Barnsley and, you know, surrounding areas, what I'm seeing, anything over 300-400K is sticking that bit longer, to be quite honest. And I think that's when it really comes down to, you know, higher interest rates, which is what we've got now. We've still got a high base rate, relatively so, even though it is coming down slowly. And I think also, you know, families are generally pushing themselves to the absolute limit, you know, so can they put down that extra 5 or 10 grand where, you know, probably last year or the year before they could, now they're probably struggling, you know, to do that. So I think they're a little bit more cautious in actually moving in general. And they're thinking, okay, well, can we spend 10 or 15 grand on our current home to make it better? And I see a lot of that, to be quite honest. So, yeah, I think if obviously you wanting to get into flipping houses, stick to the first time buyer market right now or the second mover market, but don't be going anything over, you know, 300-400K. But again, it's all relative to where you are because there's pockets of the market that are actually still doing quite well. You know, luckily Barnsley has had a massive investment into the town centre, about 250 million. And over obviously the years that I've been, you know, in property, I've seen a massive increase in house prices. So it is very, you know, it's very location dependent, to be honest, because I think some markets or some areas are a bit more stagnant. I think Wakefield is definitely that, and parts of Rotherham and Huddersfield. But actually Barnsley seems to be doing all right. And I think it's because of the town centre investment and other investment that has been going into the area. And I think you're looking for regeneration. You know, Barnsley's going through that and has been going through that. But I think other areas where I am, they haven't had that regeneration. So I think that's where I'm seeing the prices stick more.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously then, you know, it's not leading to sales. And then obviously potentially renting out the projects instead, which is fine. But, you know, you've just got to take a bit of a longer term view if you are in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. Do you see yourself staying within Barnsley as you build your rental portfolio?
I think, to be honest, I'm very proud to be from Barnsley, even though I've got like northeast roots and stuff through my dad. You know, I think I will always remain in Barnsley to some degree, but there's much bigger projects and bigger things that I want to be doing that are outside of Barnsley. You know, I think for me, I'd love to have a portfolio actually in the northeast. You know, I've got investors in the northeast as well, and I've obviously was at uni in Newcastle as well, but actually probably abroad as well. I'd like to do some stuff abroad at some point.
Whereabouts?
Probably Dubai if I was being like really
what developments
driven.
or
yeah. So I haven't really come up with the master plan of that just yet, but I think at some point in my career I would like to, you know, do things abroad, and I personally love Dubai. I think you either love it or you hate it, and for me I absolutely love it, and I think I can see the development opportunities that are out there, and I think the data doesn't lie in that respect. But I think I'd always keep a portfolio in Barnsley, South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, and then hopefully in the northeast as well.
Yeah, for sure. Dubai's an interesting place. Everyone seems to be going over there, don't they? And obviously it has its tax benefits, etc. And everyone seems to be a property investor over there at the moment. But I just love the way that the country's run. It's built for success. It's built on a platform to provide a platform for anyone who goes there to be successful.
Yeah, of
Whereas
course.
in the UK at the moment, it just feels like they're trying to strangle anybody that wants to better themselves.
Yeah, of course. And I think obviously with Labour coming in, I think things have been tough. I think things are tough at the minute. I don't think things are easy in the market at all. And will it get better? Yeah, probably over time. But I think we've got to go through a lot of shit, to be honest, what we're seeing now, to get to those better times. But in the meantime, you know, I just want to carry on with my plan and stick to it, and obviously pivot where I need to. But yeah, I think, you know, some sort of time in my career I will develop abroad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's difficult because there's so much negativity in the press. I tend not to read the media or watch the media, but there's a lot of negativity around at the moment. But in my inner circle and myself and my friends and the colleagues and clients that I work with, people are doing bloody well, I'll be honest. People are doing really well.
Yeah.
So I just could try to focus on that really.
Yeah, there's always winners and losers in every market, to be quite honest. And I think, again, growing up, I saw that within, my dad's circle of friends, all being business owners, and some were doing extremely well, and some weren't, and I think it doesn't matter what market you're in, there's always going to be winners and losers. And it just depends which side of the coin you're in, but you've got to always keep your finger on the pulse and watch the market and pivot where needed.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like Barnsley's quite an eclectic mix then, if you can do your high-end flips, but you can also look at your rentals. Will you look, when you build your rental stock, will you look at the lower value stuff?
Yeah, I think not too low. You can still buy a property. I remember house number 3, I bought that for 52.5 grand, and that was a 1-bed cottage in not a so great area of Barnsley. I ended up selling it for 96.5 grand, and that we turned it into a 2-bed. So I don't think I would ever go low in terms of stock value, but I would still go under 100k roughly, and then capitalize on it from there. But the area for me is probably more important than actually the property itself. I don't want to be in the worst areas, because I think it creates more problems and more headaches further down the line with tenants and obviously the property, etc. So I think better areas, command better tenants and things. So yeah, that's definitely my plan.
Cool. So commercial or residential developments, anything like that? Is that something you think you'll go into?
To be
eventually?
honest, funny you actually mentioned that. I have been approached to purchase a commercial development and turn it into resi, about 14 flats. And again, I was actually speaking with a lender a couple of weeks ago about it, and it's not about getting the funding because I can get the funding. It's actually, am I ready to do that? And I would say I'm a little bit off that just yet, even though I could do it now. I was
going to say, I think you're ready. Personally.
But I'm a bit like, okay, well, I'd rather build my portfolios out. I'd rather do that first, hammer down that on a couple of years, and then go into something like that. Then actually would then bring in the rentals from that side of things. So I'm not saying never. I'm just saying just not yet.
I think it'll happen for you, and honestly, a certain opportunity will drop, and you'll just think, why not? Because on the same principle, when you were talking about buying portfolios, a lot of the commercial resi stuff I've done, like one building we turned a business centre into 11 apartments.
Amazing.
It's a lot of conveyancing, one architect, one planning consultant, just one.
The numbers just get bigger.
Exactly.
Don't they? Yeah.
And then as you're building your portfolio, at the end of it, you've got 11 properties.
Yeah.
It's just far quicker.
Yeah.
On that basis, so I'm sure you'll go that way for sure. So if we did a podcast in 5 years' time and we sat here now, what would be going on?
Probably bigger portfolio purchases. The portfolio would be a very good size, but I'm very keen actually with the portfolio to actually bring down the loan to value quite quickly as well.
Okay.
So it'll be in quite a stable position. I'm not going to heavily leverage it all up to 80 or 75%. I'm really going to pay it down, and then actually I think on the other side of things, possibly the more commercial stuff, commercial to resi. But again, I think I would like to build as well. Again, it's more the flip side of things that I love. The development, high spec renovations. Obviously, I've done a little bit of building, only a small part with the extensions and things.
More than most people.
I think, to be honest, I would probably build, luxury high-end new builds. And I think I would probably specialise in bungalows, actually, because there's such a shortage of them.
It's amazing. Yeah, 15, 20 years ago, I remember nobody wanted them. It was just they were just sat for sale around my area. Yeah. Now they're like hen's teeth.
They're going
you
like
can't
hotcakes.
Everybody wants them.
And I think bungalows have actually become more attractive as well. I think, more families are actually wanting to get into bungalows.
Yeah,
it's
going
not
into
just the older generation or the downsizers.
Yeah.
And as well, you can make a bungalow really, really good.
Yeah, you can.
And I think we should probably get away from the term bungalow because everybody thinks retirementville when actually, they're very high spec properties. So.
Yeah, and the purchase at the end of the flip on your bungalow generally is cashed up because it's that generation that have got the wealth.
Of course.
So that works as well. So last couple of questions. The end game for Emma Fielding, is there an end game? What's the dream?
I have actually been asked this question quite recently, and it actually really got me thinking. And I think, being 30 now, I've probably got another 10 years that I can go hell for leather at it, really. So by 40, I want to be kind of semi-retired, traveling a little bit more. Obviously, at that point, I'll have staff and things like that. Again, getting the portfolio to a certain size over the next couple of years, I want to bring in staff, to manage them, basically. So I want to be relatively hands-off, and again, I might look at business acquisitions as well, estate agencies, letting business management, all that jazz, which I think is really exciting, to be honest. So not only just having a property portfolio, doing developments on new builds, but actually having other businesses within property as well.
And living abroad potentially.
Potentially living abroad, I think that would be pretty cool. Or if not, 6 months over there, 6 months here.
That's my dream, for sure. Right, quick fire round to finish.
Yep.
So no thinking about it, just quick answers. Favourite type of property to flip?
3-bed semi.
Least favourite room to renovate?
Oh God, utility. Oh, I hate that.
Best thing to look for in a potential flip?
Building that's got no an extension that's got no building regs, then get the building regs on it. You can negotiate well.
Worst flip trend people need to stop?
Ooh, some mad crazes with wood paneling doesn't work.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, everywhere. Do it in small doses.
Yeah.
Don't do it everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. Last one piece of advice for someone starting out.
Get educated. It doesn't have to be paying for a course or anything like that. Put the hours and time into actually, connecting with the right people, growing your network, and just sitting down and doing the hard graft before you actually get the keys to the property, because that's when the real work starts.
Yeah, for sure. Emma, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on.
Thank you.
Very insightful.
Thanks,
I'm sure
David.
there's a lot of value to be had for the listeners. To anyone listening, if you have enjoyed the show, please do like, share. It really does help. Until next time, take care.